friend. There are stories that tell us what happened, and there are stories that tell us who we are. This is one of the latter. Listen closely to the story of a queen and voices she never asked to hear.
There was once a queen who woke one morning and could hear every voice in her kingdom. Not spoken words carried on wind or messenger, something deeper. The complaint a farmer muttered into his own beard as he walked his fence line. The prayer a mother whispered over a sick child. The quiet resentment a soldier carried, but never said aloud, even to himself. All of it came to her, all at once, the moment she opened her eyes. She did not know how the gift had come. Some said it was a blessing left by her grandmother, who had ruled with a fairness people still spoke of decades after her death. Others said it was simply what happens to a person who cares too much, for too long, about too many people. The queen herself never asked where it came from. She only knew what to do with it. At first, it felt like the answer to every problem a ruler had ever faced. She heard the miller cheating his customers before a single complaint reached her court, and she corrected it before anyone lost a coin. She heard the ache in a widow's chest before the widow ever worked up the courage to ask for help, and she sent grain to her door without being asked. She heard fear in the barracks before it could curdle into mutiny, and she walked among the soldiers herself, and the fear went quiet. The people began to call her the queen who knew. They meant it as praise. For a long time, it was. She would sit on her throne in the mornings and let the voices come to her like a tide, sorting them, answering them, weighing one against another. A dispute over a boundary stone, a son's guilt over words said to his dying father, a child's wish for a dog. She held all of it, and she believed, truly believed, that this was what a good ruler did. She believed a queen who heard everything could fail no one. The first advisor watched this for a long time before he said anything. He was an old man, not given to flattery, who had served her grandmother before her. He noticed things others did not, mostly because he was one of the few people in the palace who did not want anything from the queen. He noticed the way her hand had begun to tremble slightly when she lifted her cup. He noticed that she had stopped finishing her sentences. He noticed that she laughed less, though she still smiled, because a queen who does not smile frightens people. "You look tired," he said to her once, plainly, the way he said most things. "I am the only one who can hear them," she answered. "If I rest, who listens?" He did not answer that. He only refilled her cup and left her alone, because he understood that some things a person has to walk into themselves before they can walk back out. The voices did not stop coming. If anything, they multiplied, because people had learned that the queen heard everything, and so they began, without quite meaning to think louder. A farmer who once simply worried about rain now worried about rain and worried that the queen would hear him worry and think him weak. A young bride hoped for a good marriage and then hoped the queen wouldn't hear how afraid she was that it wouldn't be one. The kingdom, without realizing it, had begun performing its inner life for an audience of one. The queen heard all of it. The real voices and the ones bent slightly out of shape by the knowledge of being heard. She could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. She stopped sleeping well, not because the voices were cruel, most were not, but because there were so many of them, and each one asked, in its own way, to be answered. She began to forget, in the middle of a sentence, what she herself had meant to say, because 3 other voices had arrived in the space between one word and the next. She signed decrees she barely remembered signing. She wept once, alone, in a hallway, and could not say afterward whether the grief had been hers or a stranger's, borrowed by accident. One evening, she rode out past the palace walls, alone, which she had not done in a long time, and came to the well at the edge of the capital, where she used to draw water as a girl, before she was queen. She sat on its stone rim, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, heard nothing. It frightened her more than the noise had.
She sat with the silence, the way a person sits with cold water, waiting to see if it would hurt. It did not. It simply was. For the first time in a long while, she noticed the sound of her own breathing, and beneath that, the shape of a single thought that belonged only to her. Not a complaint or a prayer she had inherited from someone else, but a plain, unremarkable wish to sit by a well a little longer. The first advisor found her there near dark. He did not ask why she had come. He sat beside her on the stone rim without a word, and for a long while, neither of them spoke. "I used to think," she said finally, "that hearing everyone was the same as caring for everyone." He said nothing. "I don't think I've heard myself in months." He still said nothing, because there was nothing to add to that, and he had learned long ago that the wisest thing a person can do for someone finding their way to a truth is to stop talking before they reach it.
She did not stop hearing the voices of her kingdom after that night. The gift, whatever it was, did not leave her, but she began, slowly, to build something the well had shown her without meaning to, a room in herself the voices could not enter. Not out of neglect, out of necessity. She learned to close the door on the tide each evening, the way a person closes a shutter against weather, and to sit for a while afterward in a quiet that was entirely her own. The kingdom did not suffer for it. If anything, her judgments grew steadier, not weaker, because a well that is never allowed to rest eventually offers only muddy water, however deep it runs. Years later, a young girl who would one day be queen asked her how she had carried so many voices for so long without losing her mind. The old queen thought about it for a while before answering. "I didn't," she said. "Not at first." The girl waited for more. There wasn't any. The old queen only nodded toward the window, where the well could be seen at the edge of the fields, small and plain and unremarkable, the way the most necessary things often are. "Find yours," she said. "Early."
We live in an age where every voice demands to be heard. Every opinion, every headline, every notification. We mistake constant noise for understanding. But wisdom has never belonged to the loudest voice, only to the clearest one. So protect your silence, because that's where you'll hear the only voice that can truly guide your life. Your own. Until next time, keep seeking wisdom. And whenever you lose your way, ask the head.